Perfect, great. Good, so let me first just say a few words about the AfNWA, and then I will introduce Bonita a bit more. So the African Network of Women in Astronomy started with all the preparations last year, and then officially we launched the network in January this year. In collaboration with the African Astronomical Society. So currently AfNWA is one of the committees of the African Astronomical Society. And since January, we've been really quite active. By now, we have more than 90 members from 30 different countries. And I have to mention that about more than 80% are actually young women that are just starting their master or PhD, which means that having AfNWA is really timing, so that on one side we can make the strong network between the women in astronomy that are working on the continent, so that we can really participate in all the current activities, because we know that astronomy is one of really emerging fields in Africa. And then in the same time that we can really support all of these young women that are there, so that we don't lose them in their professional path, like very often we have a chance to unfortunately face. And by now we started with the organization of different trainings. So we organized by now 3 different trainings that is more like strengthening different capacities. Then we try to give more visibility to AfNWA during different talks, presentations, sessions. We are now starting with preparation of the Afna Awards. So we are planning, starting from this year, every year to give 2 awards for women in astronomy in Africa. One will be for more senior astronomers, and one will be for early career women in astronomy. So you will, in the coming month, maybe 1.5 months, receive more news. So please be encouraged that if you are working in astronomy in Africa, that you apply, or that you can, or that somebody can, or that you can nominate somebody. So I will now introduce Bonita. So Bonita, Dr. Bonita de Swardt did her PhD in astronomy in 2009. She defended her PhD working closely with the South African Observatory. And after that, she also at SAAO did her first postdoc in astronomy. She was always very much motivated with the human capacity, building and development. So I would say that over the last years, she basically focused more in that aspect. So how through astronomy we can really strengthen the human capacity development. So she worked for several years with the Department of Science and Technology in South Africa. And then currently she's under the SAAO, or basically the SAAO, the South African Radio Astronomy Observatory, working again on all the human capacity development division. And she really has a long experience currently in that field, and she worked on development of different strategic plans for the human capacity development in South Africa, and then further as well. So she will be giving us a talk on the growing network of skilled professionals in astronomy, the story of the SK South Africa, and there will be a special focus also on the girls and women in that aspect. So welcome once again, Bonita. Thank you very much once again for accepting the invitation, and please go ahead.
Thank you very much for the kind words, Mariana, and inviting me to be able to give this talk. I think today's focus is going to be more on those inspiring ladies that have come out of, what I would say was the South African SAAO, and now the South African Radio Astronomy Observatory. So what I'm going to start sharing my screen. And if we just give you one moment.
Yes, that's perfect. If you can check
able to see that? Sure.
Full screen.
All right. So as Maria, at the moment with the Human Capital Development Program at SAAO, and where I look at managing all these strategic partnerships and programs that form part of our HCD program. And I wanted to start this talk. Let me just go to the next slide. I thought it would be ideal just to start this talk looking at what observing facilities we currently have in South Africa, and how that has significantly increased over the last 20 years or more. Specifically, if we look at South Africa's rich history in astronomy and what were the observing facilities in our optical, what we would consider to be our optical part of the astronomy component, which is managed by the South African Astronomical Observatory. And this can be seen at the image below, which shows the observing plateau, which is close to the town of Sutherland in the Northern Cape. And this just gives an indication of what some of these telescopes are. Not all these telescopes are South African, some are just hosted by South Africa. And just in the distance, you can see what I'm zooming in on the figure on the left-hand side, on the upper left-hand side, which is the 11-meter Southern African Large Telescope, or SALT, which is what I used as part of my PhD and also my postdoc, which was commissioning data from the SALT telescope. And we can see that there's a host of different telescopes and instrumentation, not just South Africa, but also hosting of different international types of radio telescopes. So South Africa has this very rich history when it comes to, I would say, more of the optical part of astronomy. This has also been seen in the training aspects of students, where before we had this whole human capital development program looking at developing expertise and scientists in radio astronomy. The focus was more on the optical side of astronomy. On the right side of this image, the upper right side, you can see the Hartbeespoort Radio Astronomy Observatory, which is a 26-meter dish in the foreground. And this was considered the only single dish radio astronomy facility for a very long time before South Africa invested significantly into larger and larger types of what would be considered radio astronomy mega projects. So as I would say over the last 10 to 15 years, there's been a significant increase in all the different infrastructure that we see. We now have the 64-dish Meerkat radio telescope, which is located close to Carnarvon, again in the Northern Cape province. And I would say that a large amount of success of South Africa's story for all this development in astronomy in general would be South Africa's Department of Science and Innovation's investment into this particular area. I'm just trying to go through the next slide. So if we look at what the Meerkat will be eventually incorporated to, everyone over here knows the SAAO, and I think that's more what the most popular, I would say, term people would want to hear when they talk about radio astronomy in South Africa and on the African continent. So Meerkat would be eventually incorporated into the SAAO. But it was realized very early on in South Africa's investment into astronomy that they wanted to build capacity in terms of people. And these are not just your end users, your astronomers or your researchers that are needed to do the actual research from these types of telescopes. But South Africa wanted to invest in all the different levels of types of, or diverse types of skills that is needed for these types of telescopes. This would be the engineering type of skills needed for the design and for the construction of these telescopes, as well as the individuals needed for the operations and maintenance of these telescopes, which is more the technical types of skills. So these pictures were just taken of the various different individuals, and it's a range of different programs that fall under our HCD program that would build up these expertise. So not only is the HCD program focused on building radio capacity in South Africa, it's also focused on building up this capacity in its 8 SAAO Africa partner countries. And this is shown in this image over here. Well, it's a very old image, but building up to South Africa's bid to host the SAAO, these countries were supportive of South Africa's bid to host the SAAO. So they will eventually form part of phase 2 of the SAAO telescope and will also be hosting these types of projects. And so very early on in the HCD program, there were certain objectives that were put forward of what this program needs to be met. And I think that these objectives was established initially, and they still apply today. And I'll very quickly go through what these objectives were. Firstly, to use the exciting nature of the SAAO to create a significant and interactive community of researchers, predominantly from South Africa and the SAAO partner countries. And these researchers will be working with the best researchers and universities globally. So it won't be just South Africans working isolated, but we'll be working with these international teams, making sure that we are producing world-class science. Secondly, another objective would be to create sufficient technical and on-site capacity. And this speaks to what I spoke to before, which is looking at individuals that will be involved with the construction, the operations and maintenance of the telescope site itself. And this is for MeerKAT and eventually the SAAO. A third objective was to bring students from school and undergrad into postgraduate studies, particularly those students studying physics and mathematics, as well as engineering students, to ensure that we have a pool of students that can be brought into master's, doctoral, and eventually postdoctoral type of programs. And then fourthly, this program would also contribute to the high-level objectives of the Department of Science and Innovation and the National Research Foundation, which is to ensure that we are producing a significant number of doctoral students into the economy and as well into academic teaching. So our HCD program was established in 2005 with 9 grants at the time. And these 9 grants were for PhD and master's degree studies in astronomy. And at the time, there was not a very large amount of students who applied for these 9 grants. And I think that the reason for that was mainly because we didn't have a big pool of students to select from. We also did not have many students that were aware of what SAAO and what radio astronomy is. So initially within the program, there was this large struggle to get students to apply for these types of initiatives that we do have within our HCD program. But what you would see that today, the face of our HCD program has changed quite significantly, and that is due to what is known as our Research Capacity Development Program. And this is working very closely with the universities in South Africa. And there are many different initiatives that were introduced into our Research Capacity Development Program to ensure that there is this pipeline process, making sure that students move from one academic level to the next. So in this slide, I'm just summarizing what these initiatives are. Most of them are still valid today. So there are research chairs. Currently, there are 5 research chairs at South African universities. And again, these research chairs are tasked with establishing a focused research group at a university. They also have a number of, I would say, master's and doctoral students that fall under their research chairs positions. We have also funded visiting professorships. These are high-level internationally regarded researchers to spend a percentage of their time in South Africa. And these individuals will be supervising students working on MeerKAT or SAAO type of projects. There has been a few academic positions that have been funded, and this is more in partnership with the South African universities. It could be jointly funded with the university, or it could be that the university would eventually fund the particular individual, making sure that these positions are sustainable in the long run. Then we have postdoctoral research fellowships. These are typically 3-year types of awards, and there is a focus on meerkat SAAO research, as well as our postgraduate bursary program, as I said before, it's master's and doctoral studies, again focused on meerkat and SAAO research. And then it was realized quite early on in the pipeline, and this is especially during the period that we identified that there weren't many postgraduate students that are applying for the bursary program, that we do need to invest in undergraduates coming through this pipeline. So there is an undergraduate program as well. And I should just point out that the undergraduate program is focused on what we call in South Africa previously disadvantaged candidates. And these are candidates just because of South Africa's historical background of, I would say, African, and more specifically Black African candidates not supported previously. We wanted to see more of those candidates coming through the pipeline. So the undergraduate program, I would say, was very successful and is still very successful in getting these individuals through the pipeline. And the undergraduate program, you can either apply for a freestanding bursary, or what we do is we also award a block grant to universities, which is a set of undergraduate bursaries, usually 4 bursaries, where the universities will select the students and essentially look after these students. Other types of initiatives that have been funded are research groups. This was more something that was funded when we were busy with the meerkat engineering research and skills development, as well as science and engineering skills development program. These are more workshops. Okay. So if we just have a look at how many students were supported over the years since the establishment of the HCD program, this gives an indication of how many doctoral and how many master's students have graduated on the program. So 166 doctoral students and 271 master's students. And we can see that this gives the distribution of how these bursaries have increased from 2005 to 2020. I'm using 2020 here because this is the last data that I received from our team up in Johannesburg who manage the research capacity development program. So this is the most recent data that I have on my side. And you see that these grants have increased quite significantly and it has become quite stable in terms of how many awards we have made. This is just the distribution of where these grants have gone, and this speaks to those different initiatives that I spoke to before. And in this slide, you can see that most of the awards have gone towards master's degrees, and this is followed by honors and undergraduate degrees, which obviously feeds into the pipeline of master's degree studies. And then that would obviously feed into the doctoral support system that we see over here. All the initiatives on the left side, that speaks to how many research chairs and professors, associate professors, as well as lecturing positions that we have funded. And the types of initiatives that you're seeing on the right-hand side, those are more your, I would say, your technician type degrees, which I'm not going to be focusing in this particular talk, but these are more your technical type of skills that you would need for the site. Not just technicians, as well as artisan type of skills. Okay, just looking at the distribution in terms of how many engineering and how many science type of initiatives or grants have been funded. On the left or in the middle, you can see that 592 have been engineering types of initiatives, whereas 761 science types of initiatives have been funded. There's very few education type of initiatives. This is not the typical type of initiatives that we fund. This was just an isolated case where we funded some 4 individuals, I think from Carnarvon, which is the town close to the meerkat site, to undertake an education degree. And this was looking at how those individuals could eventually become teaching in science and mathematics teachers that can contribute back into those communities. Then just a breakdown of what or how many female to males have been funded. If we just have a look at these grants, and you can see this is the typical picture that we see within the STEM environment, where it's 29% awards made to females, 71% made to males. But regardless of this picture, I think what I wanted to point out is more of the excellent type of females that have come from this type of program. And I'm just going to give a few examples. So for example, this is Sinenshla Precious Sikosana, and I'm just going to call her Precious. And Precious is, I think, what we would consider one of the successful candidates that have come through this HCD pipeline. She was funded by SAAO or the SAAO back then as part of her undergraduate degree. She just completed her PhD the end of last year and is currently undertaking a postdoc that is also funded by us. And she is currently undertaking this degree at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. And she's received a number of awards as part of her postgraduate study, and those are listed over there. One of them being also the Department of Science and Technology's Tata Africa Women in Science Award. And I was part of that ceremony, and she was very happy to be able to receive that particular award. She was also among the top 20 young scientists selected to represent South Africa at the 69th Lindo Nobel Laureate meeting in Germany in 2019. Precious again is very, I would say, as with any other of our, not just our PhD candidates, but what we see with these women, they love doing outreach and educational type of initiatives. She's recently been selected to represent the diversity and inclusion as part of her research group at UKZN, where she is very passionate about transformation within the science academic sphere. Another example is Zara. I'm not sure if Zara is on this particular call, but this is an example, I think, of a woman who is not South African, but who has done very well in the South African system. Zara is from Madagascar. She came over to South Africa in 2008, and that was part of the National Astrophysics and Space Science program to undertake a second honors degree at the time. And eventually she pursued a master's and PhD in South Africa at the University of Cape Town. She's also done very well for herself. She received a postdoc, and this was a SAAO postdoc at the time, after her PhD. And what she lists as one of the most difficult periods in her academic career was when she received this particular research award, is that the transformation of going from what we would typically call an optical astronomer to a radio astronomer and pursuing radio astronomy is what she considered one of the biggest challenges in her career. And I just thought that was an interesting thing that she mentioned when she mentioned her journey through astronomy. And again, Zara is also very passionate about giving back at home. She's a visiting research affiliate with the University of Antananarivo in Madagascar. Another example is Nikita, Madan. Nikita, her doctoral studies was funded by us. She carried that out at the University of the Western Cape in cosmology and extragalactic astronomy. She applied for what we called at the time our Young Professionals Development Program, and was accepted into that program. However, before being accepted onto that program, she did not complete her PhD. She completed her PhD while she was on this particular program, which gave her work experience as well. And she joined what we call our radio frequency interference team at the time. So I think that she's also one of those inspiring type of women against all the odds. And through her employment with SAAO, she still managed to complete her doctoral studies. She's now working at the OAD as a DARA Big Data Fellow, and she develops hackathons in data science and machine learning, which gets carried out in South Africa and the SAAO Africa partner countries. So these are just a few women and examples that have come with very successful stories. And what I'm trying to show in this particular slide is what makes the HCD program so successful as well, is that we have a very high throughput of individuals going from one degree into the next. And this is not something that we see across, I would say, the national average in the South African university system. So in this particular figure, we can see on the left, going from a Bachelor of Science, so a third-year degree, to a fourth-year honors degree. It is very likely that a student will go into an honors degree. There's a 95% retention rate when they go into that degree. Going from an honors, which is a fourth-year science degree, into a master's degree, there's a 46% retention rate. Master's to doctoral, 49%. So you're holding on to half of those individuals, master students, when are retained into doctoral studies. So there must be something that we are doing correctly in order to retain or have this high retention rate within our programs. And just to show you that there are faces to these numbers that we have seen, this is a photo that was taken at, I think it was the 2018 SAAO Annual Postgraduate Scholarship Conference. And there are usually over 200 individuals that attend this conference, and it gives our master's and PhD students an opportunity to present their research at this annual conference. And you can see that there is a large, diverse range of individuals just in this picture over here. So one of the things I like to also point out is that at the time when South Africa submitted its bid of its expression of interest for hosting the SAAO back in 2003, there was considered to be, I think, around 3 what you would call radio astronomers in South Africa or on the African continent. And that has certainly changed. If you look at this picture over here, that we do now have a number of these individuals who are contributing to the science community, not just in South Africa. A lot of them have gone back to their home countries. So with this large number of individuals that we see, one of the challenges that was given to me when I joined the SAAO South Africa at the time is, how do we ensure return on investment on these graduates and postgraduates within the HCD program? And this led to the establishment of a graduate program for SAAO, looking at how we can absorb these individuals into SAAO, so giving them actually some work experience. And this is in our science and engineering teams. Another objective was we wanted to attract bright and young South African graduates straight from university to come and work for SAAO. And this was recognized as one of those programs that could contribute to the transformation agenda. I spoke about previously disadvantaged candidates contributing to SAAO. So this was one of the programs that at the time, which was back in 2014, we thought we would trial or give it a trial, and it worked very well for SAAO, especially with the engineering students. And what made it work very well is, firstly, the program offers what we call an extended internship program to graduates. So it's a 3-year program. And while students are on this program, they are expected to engage in further studies. So if students are coming with an undergraduate engineering degree or an honors degree, they would continue with a master's degree while on this program. And they're also given time as part of their workplace duties to engage in the studies. So this program has become quite popular with the universities. And I think last year we got well over 1,000 applications from students across the universities in South Africa to be able to be part of this program. So through this program, 54 graduates have been employed. It has a very hands-on recruitment campaign. These are just some images that were taken at one of what we call our open days, where we invite these students from across the country. just to come and experience.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Okay, sure. To experience what it is like to work within SAAO. And I'm just going to skip ahead to how well this program has been doing in terms of its gender distribution. And you can see that with this particular program, it seems to be doing quite well, even though the numbers are still quite low in terms of representation of women. More than half of these graduates have been women. And we also have a very high absorption rate of these graduates into the workplace after they've undertaken their internship. These are just some of the ladies that have come through this particular program. This is Bulelani. She is currently a software engineer, and she studied she's originally from the Eastern Cape and studied a mechanical engineering degree. She then went off to work as an accounting officer, and that was just because she had to support her family back in the Eastern Cape. She then decided to go study further and completed an honors degree in computer science. And that's when we employed Bulelani into the actual project, and she's doing very well. Another example is Apiwe Hotele, who's a commercialization specialist with us. Again, I think this particular slide just summarizes Apiwe's very busy agenda. And she also came into SAAO with a Bachelor of Science honors in computer science. And while she was with us, she completed an MSc in computer engineering at UCT. And she worked on an oil immersed and liquid cooled grid supercomputer, which could be used for telescope systems such as Meerkat. And she has a range of different initiatives that she is passionate about. And so she's very engaged with trying to look at how she can uplift young girls in her community back in the Eastern Cape. She's also very passionate about the technology space, the educational technology space. And she's working on various apps to look at how students, specifically in rural communities, how they can be trained in maths and science competencies using these various technologies. And just lastly, as an example, this is Christine. She was also one of our very first graduates. And she joined at the time, I think it was also part of our data science team, even though it wasn't officially our data science team. But Christine got very quickly picked up by one of these multinational companies, NASPERS, back in 2017. But she did want to pursue a PhD, and she's currently studying a degree in computer science at Cambridge University. And both Christine and Apiwe were part of the Mail and Guardian 200 Young South Africans about 2 years ago. So this is just the quality of women that we are seeing coming through the program. And these are more the younger types of women. They're very active. They want to see how they can help their communities and how they can help better the social system within South Africa and in Africa. Mariana, I'm just going to quickly go through this, if it's okay with you.
Yes, I think in few minutes.
Just to look at the future. So one of the things that I am very much interested in is, as we go towards the future, there's a lot of talk about this fourth industrial revolution. What does it mean for women? And what I think could make a big difference is if we try to look at what role this could mean in terms of these new emerging sectors that we are seeing. What role can women play in these new and emerging sectors as we go into the digitalization of local and regional economies? And I also realized that as part of the work that I've been doing in this area is that women can be very quickly be left behind if we don't make or try to make a difference. So one of the things that I'm trying to actively look at is what kind of initiatives can we introduce to further support women and promote women as we see this technology area coming about. So I just want to focus on this report that was produced earlier this year, which is a Women in Data Science report. And It's just basically a report looking at one of our programs, which is called, it's the Newton Fund Development in Africa with Radio Astronomy, or DARA for short, data program. And it's a human capacity development program in data science and big data, just looking at how we can develop the capacity, the research capacity in those particular areas, that not just in astronomy, but areas that can be transformed or have synergies with areas that are very similar within the science domain. So through this program, we just try to assess what or how well we are doing with women in our program and what we can do to further develop them. So I would just recommend for those ladies on the call that are interested in this particular area of study, they can either email me or get a copy of this report. I think the findings are very interesting. And I just want to emphasize that if we don't make a difference in these types of areas, which is what is seen as the future of work, I don't think we're not going to see change in that 70-30 distribution that I seen earlier. And I think I'm going to end it there, Mariana.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Bonita. That was really a great talk. And I appreciate the final remarks that you highlighted. I fully share your vision and worry as well that if we don't take care, that we can easily leave women behind. So great, really great conclusion points. I really appreciate. I don't know if there are any questions for Bonita. You can either just raise your hand or you can write in the chat. I can see from Ibik. Ibik is another also African star that we have of young women. She's from Nigeria and she's currently doing her PhD in Canada. So she's saying, thanks, Bonita, for the wonderful presentation. My question, my understanding is that some of these opportunities are only available to SK partner countries. Is this still the case? If yes, how could women outside the partnership countries benefit from this?
Yes, because unfortunately, our opportunities are mostly available to South Africa and the African partner countries. And that's just also for historical reasons. These countries are obviously part of the initial bid, or South Africa's bid towards hosting of the SKA. So the focus is more on trying to build capacity in those particular countries. I think that will change as we go to the future. And with some of the programs that I do try to find different types of investment for, especially with now that we're going into the data sciences, the big data, we do try to be more lenient in terms of bringing in more African representation, rather than just the South African and the SKA partner countries.
Yes, I actually had the same question as you. Yes. Is there any other questions? So please just, okay, there is Sravani. Charles, do I, okay, so just go ahead. I think you are now unmuted. So Sravani, you can.
Yes. Hi, Bonita. It was an excellent talk. This is Sravani from Arecibo Observatory. I was particularly interested in the graph that you showed where the number of master students you could retain into PhDs and PhDs into postdocs. Do you have a number for the number of female master students whom you could retain to PhDs and from PhD to postdocs? Because the trend is usually most of the undergrads, women undergrads, there are many undergrads, women undergrads get enrolled, but then as they go to higher and higher studies, the strength decreases. So is there anything that you are planning to undertake to account this?
Yeah, so I don't have the numbers directly offhand. We also haven't really done for our entire HC HCD program, we haven't done a detailed analysis of well, at that level of the women representation when we look at this throughput. That is actually one the study that I would want to undertake, I think in the next year or so. And I'm hoping to get a young lady who would be my intern to be able to conduct that study. But yes, I don't have those numbers, but yes, I understand what you are saying, that we do see this, well, the woman falling to the other side as we go into the higher types of degrees. But I hope I can get back to you with that question within a year or so.
Let's hope for the best.
Yes, thank you.
Bonita.
So Sravani, where maybe you can present yourself, just saying where are you based and.
So I'm basically from India. I did my PhD from Rochester Institute of Technology in the US. Then I did my postdoc back at the National Center for Radio Astrophysics, NCRA in India. And now I'm a postdoc at AfNWA Observatory.
Okay. Perfect. Good. Then I think we also have a question from Cynthia. Charles, can you maybe unmute Cynthia? Unge Cynthia.
Yeah, Cynthia can unmute herself. She should be able to.
Okay, perfect. So Cynthia, you can just unmute yourself and then ask the question. Okay, perfect. And also you can present yourself if you want, just briefly. Okay. Cynthia, I think we can hear you. So do you want to ask your question? Okay.
I think she might be stuck.
Yes, I'm not getting any feedback. So Cynthia, we cannot, yeah, maybe you can write also in the chat. We were not able to hear you. So maybe you can ask, you can just write in the chat. So is there any other question? So I had Bonita also a question. Like for those people who come all up to the postdoc positions under SAAO, you know that very often we have a problem of losing actually people that are in science, especially between their 30s, 40s, because of, let's say, unstable working conditions, no, in terms of the contract, you know, so people get tired of like infinite postdoc contracts. And so under, at least in, and I have to say that, I mean, in Europe, it's a really very big problem. And then especially we are losing very talented women who are between their 30s, 40s, and then they cannot manage with, you know, all the pace, with the, you know, the precarious contracts, and then also with the families. So how under SAAO you are dealing with these issues, no? So do you have any policy of like keeping the people, making the contracts after maybe one postdoc, two postdocs, you know, more stable, and then to guarantee that you don't lose people, no? And especially focusing on women, you know, because it is a fact still that it's more challenging, you know, as I said, especially between 30 and 40 years of age.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about the postdoctoral program that we currently have is that if I look at the individuals that were part of the postdoc, I would say in the last 10 years, there weren't many, I would say, South African representation. There was very few South African representation, and this is in terms of male and female within the postdocs that got higher. We're only starting to see now, or the last couple of years, that there are South African postdocs coming to the system. We're only starting to see now a lot of, I would say, Black African women that are now finishing their PhD degrees and moving into a postdoc. So that is one of the I would say, the trends that we've currently observed. And we've been trying to make it, I would say, quite lucrative in terms of trying to get those young women either employed into SAAO. We do have positions available, especially if we're trying to promote South African, well, I would say South African and South African, more the Black African woman into SAAO. So we have been looking at all the different positions that we have within our science team and trying to see if they would be able to take up positions within SAAO itself. The interesting thing is that by the time that they finish their degree, they might not always want to do that. So there's a lot of them are deciding that they either want to take a break after their PhD studies or they want to explore something different. So I don't think it's just about the monetary aspects of the salary that's being offered. I think that the women that, and this is just based on what I've been seeing with my experience, they do want to explore something different after PhD. And this is what the hard or the difficult part has been in trying to retain these women. Because I know with even with the graduate program that I showed before, trying to get women who have finished their PhD, and this is very few, being permanently employed into SAAO, we haven't been very successful in being able to do that.
Yes, I fully understand. Yeah. So I think we have two more questions. Then maybe we will need to finalize, just to keep up to 1 hour as we promised. So Denise, I'm happy to see really Denise connected. Denise is my colleague from Brazil. Denise, welcome.
Okay, thanks, Eugenia, and thanks a lot for your talk, Bonita. I don't know if you remember, but we met in Observatory of Longo years ago.
I thought the name was very familiar.
Yes, very nice. So in terms of what you just said, I want to be sure that if you mean that for the permanent positions or faculty positions at your observatory, you do have like a fraction of the positions that are necessarily for Black women or Black people in general. Is that the case?
We try to keep those positions, or if there isn't a position available, we will try to make a position specifically for that individual within one of our science teams. So essentially, we've been trying to do more than what we would do for an ordinary type of PhD or doctoral student, to try and retain those people.
Yeah, this is very nice. This is not the situation in Brazil, but but I think that it's very inspiring that you can look for the different ways people are doing in different places, and also with different fraction of Black people or Black women trying the positions, because it's definitely a way of improving the whole situation. So thanks a lot.
I would just like to say, Denise, that it is a fight with human resources, obviously, but I think it's a fight with pursuing, especially if you want to see this change within the organization.
Yeah, it's true. Thanks a lot.
There were a few questions on the chat as well. I didn't see that. So Vanessa is asking, what's the current annual spend on the SAAO for the Human Capacity Development Program?
Yeah, because I saw Vanessa's question. Vanessa, I don't have that number offhand. That is something that I would need to get from Kim, but I can always get back to you on that question.
And then Cynthia wrote her question. Well, her or his, I'm not sure, in the chat. So Cynthia is a PhD candidate at the University of Rwanda and space science analyst at the Rwanda Space Agency. Oh, I think I know Cynthia, so I think it's a lady. So the two questions are, what was the motivation of installing the radio telescopes, so the SKA in South Africa? Are they planning to extend coverage by installing more telescopes in other parts of Africa, for example, to put a station along the equatorial region? And how can someone get involved in the SKA projects? Maybe briefly you can.
Yeah. So I think
just highlight that.
The story of the SKA goes back quite a while, and its motivation for wanting to host the SKA. And there are people like Justin Jonas who are very good explaining the story of how it came about, that Justin and Bernie at the time, and I know individuals from the DSI, why they wanted to host the SKA in South Africa. But just if we look in terms of hosting these type of mega astronomy or astrophysics types of project, if we look at the location of South Africa, it's ideal for hosting of these types of projects. So we do have what we call a astronomy geographic area, which is advantages to radio astronomy. So this is one thing that we keep on building on, that we have the ideal conditions for particular telescopes and particular instrumentation within South Africa. And obviously this type of investment within South Africa contributes not only to the actual monetary investment in terms of the infrastructure, but also the skills development and the development of people, the development of communities, especially rural communities. So just because of where these telescopes are located. So there's a number of reasons why you would want to host these types of mega projects, which I think is what we see not just in South Africa, but in other parts of the world as well. Also in building a knowledge society, these types of projects are seen as ideal for building a knowledge society, which is what we would want to establish on the African continent. Yeah, so that's just many reasons as to why we would want to host something like this, not just in South Africa. But as I said before, there were other 8 different African partner countries that supported South Africa's bid for hosting the SKA. At this point, I don't think that there are plans for expanding those hosting countries within Africa. But that is something that's going to be decided on by the SKA Observatory and their consortium and council within the future. So we would have to see what happens within the future and what decisions get made in terms of inclusion of other African countries.
Good, so I think we can maybe stop here. I don't see any other question in the chat, and it's almost 1 hour since we started. So thank you once again, Bonita, for your time and your support. And many thanks to all participants for joining to the talk. We now have a new website of AfNWA. I will just briefly share that so that you can see it here, where you can get all the news. We are trying to update it, and you can also join AfNWA if by clicking here and filling the small form if you are still not a member, independently on your gender, as long as you are supporting the idea of strengthening the connections between the women that are working on the continent. So I would like to acknowledge once again the African Astronomical Society for all the support, especially to Charles and all the Secretariat Office. Thanks, Charles, and all the team. And also the African Science Stars, who also gave us support with advertising this event and preparing the poster. So thank you very much once again, everybody, and hope to see you soon at some of other activities. Thank you, Bonita. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mariana. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.